What up, my MMA homies? It's me again. So, I still can't wrap my head around how Stipe Miocic is the underdog in this weekend's title fight against Francis Ngannou. Am I missing something here, folks? The way I remember it, Ngannou was taken down ruthlessly the entire fight, and he finished 3 rounds turtled against the fence, getting saved by the bell. Stipe was the underdog in that fight too, and when the odds opened for this rematch, Stipe opened up an even bigger underdog than in the first encounter. Nonetheless, I can see why the bookies are looking at it this way. Ngannou is coming in hot, after 3 vicious knockouts against 2 ex-champions. Needless to say, Ngannou is bringing some serious power into this fight. Some of the shots he lands seem glancing, but amazingly, they drop heavyweights, just like how Conor used to drop featherweights. In a nutshell, Ngannou's basically got 3 attacks. A jab cross combo, where he will throw a jab while taking a step to the outside, in order to line up his right hand, to land a big overhand. This is his main go-to attack, and because of his long reach and explosiveness, he can often quickly cover distance and catch his opponent off guard. The left hook is another mainstay of Ngannou's, and this is something he also likes to use, to set up his right hand. Here, for example, you can see him stepping in with his left hook, before throwing his overhand. Mainly though, this left hook is his primary counter, to someone stepping in to strike. Ngannou doesn't like to get out of the way, trusting his power. He likes to set his feet, and look to answer your power with his own counter hook. Ngannou carries power in both hands, and here you can see, when Alistair Overeem tried to step in to throw a right hand, Ngannou landed a hybrid hook uppercut, to put Overeem out. Ngannou doesn't need to touch you many times to hurt you, and if you keep throwing the same strikes, his counter hook will eventually find you. Finally, Ngannou likes to chase you, while throwing a barrage of hooks and overhands, looking to overwhelm you. This isn't a sophisticated attack, but given his explosiveness, this is effective for him. As you can see in his last fight, many of his strikes against Rozenstruik missed, but Ngannou persisted and eventually found his mark. Now, studying Stipe's evolution as a fighter would take an entire video in itself, and while I haven't studied him directly, I have made a few videos on him already if you want to check them out. However, there's really no need to pick him apart, in order to read the tea leaves. These 2 fighters have already fought once, and if anything, the unambiguous outcome of that contest should tell you everything you need to know about this rematch. Ngannou is going to have to make some serious adjustments, in order to dethrone the current heavyweight king. Many people like to judge Stipe based on his last 3 fights against Daniel Cormier, but the clinic he put on Ngannou is noteworthy. The moment round 1 started, Ngannou's ability to use his best weapons was immediately put into doubt. Stipe's head movement was exceptional in that fight. While he could have immediately resorted to the typical wrestler tactic of shooting for takedowns whenever Ngannou stepped in, Stipe was instead using slips and level changes in the pocket. Right away, Ngannou's left hook was swinging at air. Stipe was also extending his jab hand, in order to block Ngannou's overhands. Stipe's footwork was also on point, simply backing out or using lateral movement against Ngannou's power shots. What makes his performance brilliant though, was his overall defense combining these 3. Many times, without even having to resort to blocking, Stipe was just using slips to evade Ngannou's combos. Here you can see, Stipe rolls under both the right overhand, and the left hook. He then follows it up with some quick circling, in order to avoid getting backed into the fence. In another nice example of Stipe's defense, look at how he avoided this Ngannou bullrush. We can see Stipe block the overhand with his lead hand, roll under the hook, block the overhand again, and then quickly circle out back to the center. These evasions by Stipe were beautiful to watch, as many were expecting Stipe to just get overwhelmed by Ngannou's power. Instead, he stayed calm under pressure and worked his game plan. Now Ngannou isn't dumb. He quickly made his own adjustments too. Midway through round 1, when he noticed all the slipping Stipe was doing, Ngannou switched to throwing uppercuts, to try catch Stipe's dipping head. But everything comes with a cost in fighting. An uppercut is a short-range weapon, and stepping in close to the better wrestler, is the last thing you want to do. Ngannou stepped in with an uppercut this time, instead of an overhand, to try catch Stipe, and got taken down instead. He spent a minute on his back eating some ground and pound, and once he got up towards the end of the round, was never his same explosive self again. Now, in round 2, Ngannou made another adjustment, this time trying to stay at range and use his jab more. This isn't a bad idea against a wrestler, but Ngannou's depleted cardio had left his mobility compromised, and Stipe was evading his strikes even more easily now. With no footwork or cardio to even hop backwards, Ngannou was a sitting duck for Stipe's circling jab. Not just one-off strikes, but combos too. Stipe was using his jab to set up his right hand, to land power shots on Ngannou's static head. Stepping in against a wrestler like Stipe is always going to be risky. Every time Ngannou tried to get aggressive with stepping in, Stipe always had the option to change levels and shoot for a takedown. At the 2-minute mark, Ngannou got taken down and spent 3 minutes grounded eating strikes. He eventually was saved by the bell, and the rest of the fight was basically Ngannou getting out-wrestled on the feet and on the mat, spending large amounts of time stuck on his elbows getting ridden by Stipe. Now, a lot of MMA fans have a blind spot when it comes to what we call wrestling defense in MMA. There's takedown defense that's well understood, but there is a whole other area of wrestling called mat work. This is a very broad area I have made several videos about, but in a nutshell, getting back to your feet against someone who knows what they are doing can be a very technical affair. All the brute force in the world cannot overcome bad body mechanics. Once Stipe takes you down, he is going to do everything he can to keep your posture broken. Here you can see, Ngannou makes it to a turtle position, but before he can plant his hands to push off them, Stipe has already got a spiral ride, and is using his knee to nudge Ngannou forward, face planting him. Ngannou eventually plants his hands. But immediately Stipe is pushing down on his neck with his forearm, to keep pressuring Ngannou's posture and making pushing off his hands hard. Even when Ngannou manages to get both knees off the ground. Notice how Stipe keeps putting pressure on the back of Ngannou's head, keeping his posture broken. Stuck bent over, when Ngannou tries to hand fight this head pressure, Stipe tips him over, back onto his knees again, and traps him in the spiral ride. Even worse, Stipe would sometimes switch to a headlock to really put pressure on Ngannou's posture, keeping him broken down on all fours. All credit to Ngannou for toughing out this punishment for 5 rounds, and not giving up the choke or looking for some other way out to end it early. Carrying your own body weight and Stipe's, for extended periods will drain your cardio fast, and Ngannou's unfamiliarity with spiral rides really cost him. Several times he was trapped in a spiral ride. Seemingly unfamiliar with how to defend this tactic. Now, some of you might be surprised that Stipe had this kind of wrestling pedigree. But this fight with Ngannou was nearly a carbon copy of an earlier fight in Stipe's career, also against a heavy hitter with one-shot KO power. In his fight with Mark Hunt, Stipe used the exact same wrestling techniques. He didn't have the slips and evasions he does now, but he was successfully level changing every time Mark Hunt stepped in, and taking him down at will. Once he had him in the tripod, he was again using spiral rides to keep Mark Hunt on his knees, and was also pushing down on his neck to keep his posture broken. Stipe also switched to front headlocks, and was also tipping Hunt over to break him back down again. Mark Hunt had a bit more wrestling savvy than Ngannou, so Stipe had to add in some cradling to get mat returns, but who's counting? That fight was a one-sided 5-round beating, which ended with a gassed Mark Hunt eating dozens of unanswered blows in a turtled position, before finally getting it waved off by the ref. Anyways, aside from the takedown threat, Ngannou will have to deal with the mat wrestling skill set Stipe already displayed 6 years ago. This is in addition to the slipping and circling footwork Stipe was using to neutralize Ngannou's power. Ngannou hasn't really had a chance to display his wrestling improvements in recent fights, so it's hard to say how much he has grown in that department. Nonetheless, what might some of his improvements look like? Assuming he can't get the quick knockout, Ngannou is going to have to display some wrestling fundamentals for 25 minutes, to at least make Stipe's cardio pay, every time he tries to wrestle, rather than give up easy takedowns and rides. This defensive wrestling was displayed by JDS in his first fight with Stipe. There, JDS was quick to get the whizzer. To quickly pull Stipe up, to preemptively stop the level change to a double. He was jabbing lower, so that if Stipe level changed and shot, he could quickly downblock, and dig for an underhook. When Stipe got deep on his hips, JDS was quickly digging for the crossface, to put his head on the inside, where he could then quickly look to reframe. Actually, if I had to choose one thing, cross-facing is probably the most helpful thing Ngannou could add to his defense. Many critical times, JDS was able to use the crossface to get Stipe's head back on the inside, where JDS could then start using the power of his hips to defend the takedown. Crossfacing is an immediate defense that Ngannou showed no instinct for in their first fight, and adding this alone could be very helpful. That being said, wrestling cardio isn't something you develop overnight. And even if Ngannou now knows what to do, his body might not be able to keep it up for 25 minutes. Stipe, on the other hand, is an ex-Division I wrestler, and has shown he can keep his activity high for 5 rounds. Even in his loss to JDS, he was wrestling hard right until the very end. Alrighty, that's it for today. The odds seem to be rapidly closing, and Stipe might even flip to the favorite. Who knows? Will Ngannou pull a Dustin Poirier and surprise to the upside? Or will it be an even worse beatdown this time? Do let me know in the comments. Either way, I sure hope it isn't like that fight with Derek Lewis. Till next time, folks.
You just chased him the whole time. Have you ever figured out why you did that?
I think I was just in a place that I couldn't control myself. I was like, I won't say I didn't care, but it was just weird and something that from there on I like promised myself to control that.
Mm-hmm.